Hello everybody, Prowl here, and Simon has put out some new information that is upending a little bit of how we know the world of Hytale and how it's going to generate and how the difficulty scaling within the world is going to work. So I have some bullet points here that I've written down of how we understand how the world works now after this. And I have a tweet to show you of Simon's that has some pictures and a little bit of information on it as well that I'll show you here in a second. But I wanted to go over this to give everybody the best understanding for how the zones work, how the world generation works, and how difficulty factors into all this, because there is a scaling difficulty within the world itself that I think most people are going to like. So let's kind of jump in here. First of all, we're still in world generation version 1 right now. They're still working on world generation version 2. And we're going to be getting a blog post about World Generation version 2 after Christmas. Version 2 is supposed to do things that nobody has ever seen in the space before. What those things are, we don't really know. What we do know is that maybe no World Generation 2 stuff will be in at early access launch, but we will start to see it trickling in different areas of the game as we go through early access, and that trickle should start pretty soon. Now, one cool thing that we do know about World Generation version 2 is that it has full modding control over generation. So for anybody that likes to play mods or anybody that likes to make mods, modders will be able to change and create and do pretty much anything they want to do with World Gen. So that's pretty cool. All right. So let's go over what we know, what information we got. I'm going to bring over this Simon tweet right here. And Simon tweeted this out. And the zones have been renamed. So they had other names before. They've been changed slightly in most areas here. So we have the Emerald Wilds, Howling Sands, Whisperfrost Frontiers, and Devastated Lands. Previously, these were known as Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, and Zone 4. We have some new information here. These zones will be broken up into regions. More information on regions here in just a second. And regions will be broken up into biomes. So we have like 3 different categories within our world. Now, as he says here, regions are a bundle of biomes that we can treat them as tiers of difficulty in a way, even though right now the difficulty is somewhat not that steep between the tiers. And I've had a little back and forth with Simon, and I have some additional information for you on how that's likely to work. And then here's some screenshots that you would get when you first wander into a particular zone, or not zone, but a particular region. So here's Frozen Coasts, which is a region inside of the Whisperfrost Frontiers zone, Drifting Plains inside of the Emerald Wilds, Basalt Peninsula inside of the Devastated Lands, and Boreal Reach inside of the Whisperfrost Frontiers. So there we go. We have 4 different regions there inside of the different zones. Okay, let's hop back over here and let's talk about these a little bit. So some zones are inherently more difficult than others, and then some regions are inherently more difficult than others. So we have zones 1 through 4. And then those are the 4 zones. And we do know that the zones themselves will have a little bit of difficulty between them too. I'll talk about that here in a moment as well. The difficulty levels aren't enormous, but they are there, and they're not intended to be enormous. And when early access starts, there may not be much difficulty at all difference between them, but they'll fine tune that as we go throughout. And then regions are broken up into biomes, and there are several biomes per region. And we're unsure if the same biome can appear in 2 different regions. So can the same biome be in the Frozen Coasts region and in the Boreal Reach region? I wouldn't think so, but it's just one of those little things that we just don't really fully know yet. So I want to go over how this is going to work at this time. So when early access starts, how is the world going to lay out, I guess? So to the best of our knowledge, this is what we got. So you're going to start out in some type of starting area. So let's just say this big blob is our starting area, okay? And this starting area is going to consist of all 4 of the different zones that we know about. There's one, and there's one. So let's say we have these 4 different zones, and there we go. So we have 4 zones here that we've highlighted. Now, we know these zones are going to break up into regions. So let's take this zone here and let's just kind of break it up into, we know there's 3 different regions that can appear in zone 1 per that tweet that we looked at earlier, right here. So Emerald Wilds will have 3 regions, several biomes, whatever that means. So you could have this be a region, this be a region, this be a region. And let's say this zone has 4 regions in it. And then let's label these. Okay, so let's zoom in on this. So zone 1 has these 4 different regions in it. We know there's 3 regions in zone 1. We don't really know if they can repeat or not. So let's just assume for now that they can. Let me swap these. We'll put region 3 right here, region 2 right here. And I'll make these a different color to make it a little bit easier for you guys to read. Let's make them orange. So there we go. So then we know that the regions will break up into different biomes. So here we go. Here's the final breakdown. You have a region broken up into biomes, a zone broken up into regions, and then your world broken up into zones. So that's kind of how things are going to go. You can just picture all of these different things, all these different line breaks everywhere here. Now, when we talk about difficulty, I'm going to try to do this in a way that looks decent and makes sense. Okay, so I want to break this down into difficulties for you now, so we can kind of start to figure out what this is going to be like. Green is going to be easy. Red is going to be hard. That's what we're going to get to. So let's say region 1 is all pretty easy. Let's say region 2 is a tiny bit harder. Start moving towards yellow here. Region 3 is just a little bit harder. So you see we're starting to go from green to red. And zone 1 we know is the easiest zone. I'm not going to draw out the lines for zone 2, 3, and 4 here. So I want you to kind of imagine it working in this way. So then we know that zone 2 and 3 are going to be a little bit harder than zone 1 is. Let's say their highest tier of difficulty is somewhere, let's say zone 2 is somewhere, highest tier of difficulty is yellow. Let's say zone 3, highest tier of difficulty is somewhere in the orange. And then zone 4, the highest tier difficulty is in the red. So you kind of go inside of a zone itself, you go from easy to harder difficulties. And then between the zones themselves, you go from easier to harder difficulties. Now, the key here is, what is the difference between the easiest of the easy zone and the hardest of the hard zone? Well, I did talk to Simon about this, and your difference is not that great. So as per Simon, and what he has said is the difference between the easiest of the easy and the hardest of the hard in terms of the zones and the regions themselves isn't so great, to where if you had like full like iron, like mid-tier gear, like nothing special, nothing crazy, you would still be able to go into zone 4, even into the harder region in zone 4. You can still explore around in there. If you run across a random mob, it'll be more challenging, but you could fight it and kill it. And you wouldn't have to be like the best of the best player to do it. Okay. But as these zones progress and get harder, and the regions inside of zones get harder, there will be more of other challenges there. There's prefabs, or you could call them structures, or groups of structures together that you may go into raid. And the harder the zone and the harder the region, you're gonna start to feel it more there. So in zone 3, we saw a picture where Simon once posted an Outlander camp. I think it was an Outlander camp. And it was actually a city. It's like a big town. It's full of Outlanders, which are one of the bad factions in the game. And if you were to, in normal gear, go into zone 3 and try to take on this like town, this village of Outlanders, you're probably going to die. You're probably not going to be able to do that because it's a big place. There's a lot of mobs there. It's a harder structure to defeat. So while you may be able to go and explore in zone 3, you can get the resources that the zone has underground or above ground, get the blocks, etc. Are you going to be able to take on the hardest content that exists inside of zone 3 or inside of zone 4 while you're in the very early game in zone 1? Maybe the extremely skilled players will be able to, like people that are just really good at combat. I'm talking about the people that can like go through and no gear Elden Ring. Like you could go through and just kind of beat anything just because you have that level of skill. Maybe those people can, or really good people generally can. But will the average person be able to take on a hard structure in zone 3 or zone 4 when they're just at kind of that zone 1 level? No. I wanted to stress that because I know a lot of people will get stressed about difficulty. You have two sides of this coin. Some of you guys don't really want a lot of difficulty difference. You just kind of want to go everywhere and do whatever you want and focus more on the non-combat parts of the game. Some of you want a lot of difficulty scaling and you want there to feel like there's more progression. You want to really gear up before you get to zone 2 and then have to gear up way more for zone 3 and then zone 4. So it's erring more on the side of easy in that regard, but with those sprinkles of hard areas for those that like the challenge. Okay, I'm going to get to difficulty a little bit more here in just a second. First, let's talk about your world layout and how you spawn. I've covered this before. I'm going to cover it again because I have a little bit more information here for you about it. So let's zoom out here really quick. And let me just get let's go to black and do this. And I'm not going to draw this out too much, but here's what we're looking at. Okay, so let's say you're going to spawn, you always, at least for now, always spawn in zone 1. So let's put a marker. We'll make it a big blue X. Let's say you spawn right here. Okay, so as of right now, from what we know, when you log into early access for the first time, this is probably going to be a big infinite world, like right from the start. So you'll have another zone right here, another zone right here, and another zone right here, right? And they'll continue out in all directions. Infinite world generation, right? So you'll have all of these zones that look oddly the same as each other. I don't know why I did it like that, but you get the point. So this could be another zone 1 out here, and this could be a zone 4 right here. I do think there are like some things that the game has to make sure that certain zones don't connect to each other because they just don't look right, and the difficulty scaling would be considered too. So I don't think you can have like a zone 4 generate next to a zone 1. So I don't know if that's 100% accurate or not, but that's the way I understand it for now. So you could have like a zone 2 right there and a zone 3 right here maybe, and it just infinitely generates outwards. This is how it's likely to be when early access starts. But let me back myself up here. Eventually, I've said this before, I'm not going to go over the whole thing again, but eventually what they want to do is make this a big continent. So imagine this is a continent that you spawn into, and this continent, the starting continent, will always have one of each zone in it, and the zones should generate big enough to have everything that you need. And I think this is where a lot of your adventure mode story stuff will be. Okay, now you can decide to interact and engage with this content or not interact and engage with it. Outside of that continent, since it's a continent, it's going to be surrounded by water, big ocean. Okay, and then out here is where you would then have your infinitely generating zones. There would still be zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4. All of those would still exist out here and generate, and they would infinitely go out. So I believe this is what the end goal is. That could change. It might not be that way. It might stay the way I originally showed you. Simon could come up with a new idea that he likes better. I don't know. But I kind of like this idea. It kind of localizes the adventure part of things. You could then decide to not interact with it at all, maybe, and just go out here if you want to. You could choose to not spawn here at all, and you could just spawn out in this area and then know that there's still a center island to go to. I don't know. But anyways, that's what I know about that part. Now, getting back into here. Now, I've already talked about most of these things in some of the other areas that we talked about when we were going over the zones, the regions, difficulty there. But Hytale will also have difficulty settings eventually. I think we're just going to be one difficulty when early access first starts. But Simon has confirmed he's planning a multi-tier difficulty system like a lot of games have. So it could range from peaceful, where his example was that mobs, that maybe they don't attack you unless you attack them first. So they are peaceful unless provoked, more or less. all the way up to hard mode, where mobs will be more difficult in many ways, possibly outside of just health and damage. So there could be more to hard difficulty than just mobs take longer to kill, mobs kill you faster. Maybe there's other cool things that they could do. I have an idea here in just a little bit. So here's some of the things that we don't know so far. We don't know if certain biomes, regions, or zones will never touch each other. Are certain ones made explicitly as transitions from a biome in one zone to a biome in another zone to make that transition not appear as jarring or sharp? So I'm sure there's going to be something here, but we don't really know what those things are. Like what will be able to touch each other, what won't be able to touch each other. That's something that we'll kind of figure out along the way. Where are the oceans within this? We don't really know how oceans will work. Will there be oceans? I'm sure there probably will be. Will oceans be their own zone and then they'll have their own regions and own biomes? Or will each zone have an ocean region within it? I don't know. I guess we'll find that out. That could be a possibility as well. How large are biomes, regions, and zones? That's one we don't know anything about. Like how big is this biome right here? Are we talking hundreds of blocks? Are we talking over 1,000 blocks? How big is a region? Is a region a couple thousand blocks across? Is it 5,000 blocks across? How big is a zone? Is a zone like thousands of blocks across? We don't really know how small this is going to break down to. So that's something I'm hoping we can get an answer on sooner rather than later, because I'm really curious. How likely are we to see new biomes, regions, and zones in the future? Will they eventually decide they're going to add a new biome to region 2 of zone 1? Or will they bring in a whole new region? Hey, now there's a 4th region that has these 3 new biomes. Or are we likely to see a 5th region or a 5th zone pop in at some point that has some all new terrain type stuff to it? A Sky Islands perhaps, or something else. We don't know, but it seems like the system is set up to handle those types of things. And then we do know there are other planets that existed in prior concept art. And Simon has said that prior concept art is not necessarily something we can definitively go by. So the planet system may be scrapped altogether. Here, let me find the image for you. Here we have this right here that shows that Orbis is where we start, but there was also 1, 2, 3, at least 4 other planets that had concept art. Will we see those during early access? Will we see them when the game full releases? Will we not see any of them at all ever? We don't really know, but we also don't know how they will generate. Will a planet have zones, regions, and biomes? Or is the planet kind of like its own zone and that will be broken up into regions and biomes? We don't know how that's going to work either. So this is something else that I was really curious about knowing. Now I'll have one last thing here that I want to bring up to you. And I might do a separate video on this, but it's just a cool idea I thought of when it comes to difficulty. So peaceful, easy, normal, hard. And I want your feedback on this. Let me know down below what you think of this idea. Now, there could be several different things that go into difficulty scaling. This is just one idea of one of the things that I have. What if in the range from peaceful to hard, one of the things that changes is how difficult these difficult areas are, right? So when we talked about region 2 to 3 being a little bit harder than region 1, and then those regions and zones 2, zone 3, and zone 4 get harder and harder. So what if on peaceful mode, maybe in easy mode as well, what if there's not really a difficulty difference between them? What if they're kind of all the same? Then what if normal mode, it's kind of how Simon has talked about it and identified it so far. Like there's a little bit of difficulty difference as you go up, but nothing crazy, like I mentioned earlier on. And then what if you play in hard, or maybe if there's like a nightmare mode or something like that, like they add another even harder difficulty. What if those higher difficulties start to really ramp up the difference in the different regions and the different zones difficulty that exists? So for players that like that feeling of progression and that they have to progress, if you played on hard or nightmare difficulty, to go from zone 1 to zone 2 is going to require a little bit of gearing up. 2 to 3 is going to require some gearing up, and 3 to 4 is going to require some gearing up. So you have that feeling of progression throughout the whole course of the game. That could be a really cool way to do the difficulty in the game on top of maybe some other stuff stacked on top of that. So let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I do appreciate you guys watching the video today. If you enjoyed it, please press the like button, subscribe to the channel. I know like 90% of you guys aren't going to listen to me. That's okay. That's just how YouTube is. But if you don't mind, help a prowler out. Click the like, click the subscribe, and make sure you use code PROW8413 when you purchase Hytale or you purchase anything in game. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next time.